Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Stacy, and I'm a bookseller and the events coordinator at Belmont Books. Belmont Books, for those of you who are not familiar with us, is an independent and locally owned bookstore in Belmont, Massachusetts. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that we have two events coming up next week. Kwan Q Lai in conversation with Nareen Ahmed on Tuesday, and Pamela Painter in conversation with Virginia Pai on Thursday. You can register for these and our other events on our website, belmontbooks.com. And that is also where you can purchase tonight's books, They're Gone and Sister Dear. If you have any concerns during the presentation, you can send a message in the chat section. If you can please keep your audio and video turned off, that would be much appreciated. We're very excited to welcome Ed and Hannah. I want to tell you a little bit about them, and then I will turn the event over to them. Just let a couple of people in here. Okay, Ed Aymar publishes under both EA Aymar and EA Bars. His thrillers include The Unrepentant and the anthologies The Swamp Killers and The Night of the Flood. In both anthologies, he served as both co-editor and contributor. His column Decisions and Revisions appears monthly in the Washington Independent Review of Books, and he is also the managing editor of the Thrill Begin. Oh, maybe not anymore. Is that true? You're not doing that anymore also?
Yeah, I totally blew that pop's hand.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Is that the expression?
He's a member of the Mystery Writers of America, Crime Writers of Color, and Sisters in Crime. He also runs the Noir at the Bar series for Washington, D.C., and that is something that we have participated in, and is a great series. He was born in Panama and now lives and writes in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia triangle. Hannah Marie McKinnon was born in the UK and grew up in Switzerland. Unsurprisingly, she loves chocolate, mountains and cheese, and books, of course. When she moved to Canada with her husband and 3 sons in 2010, she went through an early midlife crisis. One morning, she decided to follow her oldest passion, writing, and never wanted to look back. Hannah's first novel, Time After Time, was a lighthearted romantic read. She then moved over to the dark side and wrote The Neighbors, a domestic suspense story, Her Secret Son, and Sister Dear. She is working on her 5th and 6th books. And without further ado, I will turn the event over to Hannah and Ed.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for that lovely introduction. And thank you so much for having us here. I'm so excited to do this event because I love, as anybody who knows me knows, I love working with independent bookstores. And last year, I read Hannah's Sister Dear, and I was blown away. I read it in maybe 3 nights, and that's only because I would have read in 1, but I really wanted to space myself out. It was just so engrossing and so much fun, and I loved it. And I had to meet her and talk to her, and we became fast friends. Well, I consider you a friend. I don't know if it's.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
That's about how I roll.
Of course you are. Yes, we're besties already.
But so when the opportunity to do an event with another writer came up, I reached out to her right away. And I was like, I think we'd have a lot of fun doing this. You don't really know who I am, but I think that's fine. Trust me, this will be good. And here we are.
Here we are. And this is my first event of the year. I mean, reading bookstore, book event is what I'm trying to say, apart from the regular event. So thank you for bringing me along.
Of course, yeah. And so we thought we'd start out by doing each doing a quick reading from our books that came out last year, and then we'll go into a conversation. And if you have any questions or anything at all, any comments, just put them in the chat and we'll get to them. Did we decide if we're going to do it during the event or after? I
can keep an eye on them if you like. I don't mind.
I should also mention that a bit of sad news. I don't want to turn the evening to a dismal note at the beginning, but I have a very slight cold, and I'm a man, and this is excruciating. It's almost not. It's really not discernible. Thank you. Thank you. That is so much more sympathy than my wife has shown.
I'm going to dry my tears now because I
Thank-
feel so sad that you have a cold.
Finally. Yeah, but I'm here. It's really a superhuman effort. You might hear an occasional sniffle, probably not because it's really that faint, but still. America, you're welcome.
And like I said to you earlier, if it turns out you have COVID, we really won't be laughing, will we now?
Yeah, then you're gonna feel terrible.
Yes.
And me, and I would too. Did you want to read first, or?
Yeah, sure. Go on then. I'll read first. Okay, so I'll read from Sister Dear. That's I was going to say this year's book, but it's not. It's last year's book. You believe we're in 2021 already? My head is spinning because it feels like Groundhog Day most days when I get up. We're back in lockdown, stay-at-home order, so it feels very much like it did last March, since last March. But anyway, so this is my fourth novel. It's a tale of sisters, half-sisters, who don't know that the other one exists until one of them, Eleanor, finds out that she has a half-sister, Victoria, who is everything and has everything that she could only ever dream of. She's wealthy, she's beautiful, she's sexy, she's happily married, and Eleanor is none of the above. And so she decides to infiltrate her sister's life without telling them they're related. And of course, well, you know, bedlam ensues because that's what's happened. That's what happens when you mess around like that. So yeah, and otherwise it wouldn't be a psychological suspense, would it? It would be, I always say with Sister Dear, if it was Dear Sister, it could be a completely different novel. But when you spin it and it's Sister Dear, you know it's going to be a bit ominous, right? All right, so this is chapter 1. I'm going to put my glasses on because I'm old and I can't see. Okay, here we go. Chapter 1. The police didn't believe me. The jury wouldn't have either if I'd gone on trial, and most definitely not the judge. My attorney had more than a few reservations about my story. Miss Allerton hadn't said as much. She didn't need to. I saw it in her eyes, could tell by the way she shuffled and reshuffled her papers, as if doing so might shake my lies clean off the pages, leaving only the truth behind in her inky royal blue swirls. After our first meeting, I'd concluded she must have known early on, before she shook my hand with her icy fingers, that I was a liar. Before she'd walked into the room in shiny 4-inch heels, she'd no doubt decided she'd heard my excuses, or a variation thereof, from countless clients already. I was yet another person claiming to be innocent, another criminal who'd remained adamant they'd done nothing wrong. It wasn't their fault, honest, despite the overwhelming amount of evidence to the contrary, a wall of impending doom surrounding me. And still, at the time, I believed the only reason Miss Allerton had taken on my case pro bono was because of the amount of publicity it gave her firm. Reducing my sentence, for there would be one, would amplify her legacy as a hotshot lawyer. I'd accepted her help. There was no other option. I needed her knowledge, her expertise, saw her as my final hope. I now know her motivations were something else I'd miscalculated. All hope extinguished. Game over. If I'm being fair, the judgments Miss Allerton and other people had made about me weren't completely wrong. I had told lies, some anyway. While that stripped away part of my claim to innocence, it didn't mean I was entirely guilty. Not of the things everybody said I'd done, things I'd had no choice but to confess to, despite that being my biggest lie of all. But I'll tell you the truth, the whole truth and nothing but. I'll start at the beginning and share everything that happened, every last detail leading up to one fateful night. The night someone died because of me. The night I lost you, too. I won't expect your forgiveness. Our relationship, or lack thereof, will have gone way beyond that point. No. All I can hope for is that my side of the story will one day help you understand why I did the things I did and why I have to do the things I've not yet done. That's it. Your turn. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm good now.
There you are. I wasn't muted all that time, was I? That would have been embarrassing.
No. I was about to start writing on the back of a piece of paper and just hold up things like ransom notes. Hannah, that was beautiful. You're such a gifted reader and writer.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
One small criticism is that you shouldn't read that beautifully when someone else is going to read right after you.
Stop it and read yours, because I read that. Look, I mean, I even have it here. Wait, where is it? I can't look.
Ah.
Yeah.
So I'll do a quick reading from They're Gone. The novel is about two women whose husbands are murdered the same way, the same night, and they're from very different paths. One is a Northern Virginia housewife, the other a Baltimore bartender, and they find themselves in a search to find out what happened to their husbands, drawn together. And they realize that if they continue looking into this, they could be next. So this is chapter 1. Winter 2019. Deb Lynn Thomas didn't understand how she'd slept through the night. Something should have woken her. The sounds of gunfire, no matter how distant. Her husband's soul ripped away. The abrupt, violent, permanent change to everything she knew. But Deb had slept peacefully and only woke when she drowsily heard the sirens outside her home. Instinctively, her first thought had been about her daughter, Kim, at Washington College. In a panic, she turned toward Grant's side of the bed, and that's when she realized he was gone. Minutes later, Deb stood barefoot in her kitchen, wearing a robe hastily thrown over the thin t-shirt and shorts she'd worn to bed, numbly listening to two cops tell her that her husband had been killed in a robbery. This wasn't something she could have imagined or accept. Now, in her early 40s, Deb was of an age when tragedy was striking her friends, rapidly moving cancer, the slow death of parents, but not violence. It felt like the worst kind of horror, one that Deb thought she'd been spared. And not Grant. He wasn't a small man or a passive one. He'd boxed in and after college, and although he didn't have a temper, people knew better than to test him. For the most part, despite a rueful, middle-aged softening, he stayed in shape. He was popular, respected by colleagues. He was popular, respected by colleagues and neighbors, always in control, physically, emotionally, professionally. When change happened, it was because of a decision Grant made. But now that notion seemed hopelessly ignorant and terrifying. Grant had been murdered, and he'd been powerless to stop it. Men who kill, Deb realized, make their own rules of law, even nature. And now the laws of her reality were unwritten. Friends and family soon filled her suburban Northern Virginia home, but Deb was very much alone. She had to be reminded to eat. Her eyes were raw from constant crying. Her ribs ached from ragged breaths. Her voice, hoarse and grease-stricken, sounded distant to her ears, as if coming from somewhere buried underground. Her 19-year-old daughter, Kim, returned from college to stay with her. Deb knew she needed to be there for Kim, but for those first few days, the most they could do was cry in the same room and hold each other, as if desperately trying to stop themselves from dissolving. Deb had known Grant was going to die someday, the same way she understood she would also die, but it was impossible to accept. There, but for the grace of God, went others, not him. That's it. It's the end of chapter 1. It's not the most cheerful chapter in the book, but it's the opening one. So I wanted to start out. Hannah's on mute, and I think she's on mute. If the host could unmute her, I had the same issue, and so I guess that's what she was doing the signing for. Yeah. So I wanted to start out before we talk about writing and publishing. Hey, you're back. With what led us to write each of these books. And I had sent Hannah a list of questions before, like a good host, and then I'm promptly veering away from it. So you can pick. Yes, yeah, you're on the spot, man. Do you want to answer that, or I can go first?
I do, sure. I'll take that one. So, why this particular book, or where the concept came from? That's dead easy. It came from a radio snippet that I heard about a woman who'd found an old wedding ring at a playground, and she was trying to find the owner through Twitter. And for some reason, the radio had picked this up, and they were just talking about it. And I thought, that's really nice. And then my other thriller writer brain kicked in. I thought, that's really lovely. But what if she finds the owner, and the owner has a much better life, and she gets really jealous and she starts stalking them? And that was it. So that's not what happens in the book, but because it's about half sisters. But there is a really key scene about a ring in the book. And it wasn't really until afterwards, I knew where the idea had come from, of course, but it wasn't until afterwards where I thought, well, it would be a pivotal scene, wouldn't it? Because that's where the idea, or where it all came from. So that dead easy, the radio. Simple as that. How about you?
Yeah, I was at Printers Row in Chicago, which is a literary festival that, when they used to have literary festivals, occurred in the spring. And I was hanging out with the writer Susanna Calkins, who writes historical fiction and was researching her next series, which was going to be set in Al Capone era Chicago. And she was telling me about it, and telling me about turn of phrase that she'd heard when she was researching this. And after the St. Valentine's Day massacre, when Capone's men gunned down a number of rivals, the newspaper termed the widows of those men the bullet widows. And she just mentioned in passing, and I was like, that's fantastic. I love that phrase. And the whole novel sort of came from that. You know, these women who are abandoned and somewhat violently, and decide to pursue justice or truth on their own. And that was the original title. And then they changed it to They're Gone. The publisher did, which is fine. I think it works. I think it makes a little more sense, and it's a little more pick upable. But the Bullet Widows was really badass. So I want to revisit
I like
it
that title too. Yeah, I do.
You
I love
can't have it.
What?
It's dibs.
Well, what if I write another one first?
All right, race is on, man. I'm writing right now as we're talking.
I loved your book. I really did. It was just fast paced and yeah, the characters were great. I loved the two women, the different points of view, and how they evolved. I just thought, it was a cracking book, Ed. It's brilliant.
Thank you. I don't know what that means, but thank you. I'm going to assume that because of everything else. Good. Awesome. So, I wanted to ask, we're talking about writing. Do you have a routine? Do you write every day? Do you write, when you're inspired? How does it work for you?
It depends. It depends on the stage that I'm at with the book. So if I'm writing, so I'm a very heavy plotter. I plot a lot, quite heavily and extensively. And when I then go and write my first draft, which I call the skeleton draft, I follow the plot, but I vomit out what I think it's actually going to end up like. So it's I'm a bit like an archaeologist. At the end of the skeleton draft, I have probably not all of the bones, and they're probably not all in the right place, but it's rough, and nobody will ever see a skeleton draft because my editor will disown me. And then I start layering. So when I do that, I generally set myself between 2,000 and 3,000 words a day, roughly, depending on what I've got going on. But I'll get quite technical about it, and I'll take my camera and what's going on these days. Not a lot, but are the boys anywhere? Do I have to ferry anyone around? Do I have any appointments? Again, these days, not so much. And so I really do stick to that schedule because I'm very deadline orientated. So I set my own, because if I don't, I'll just meander around and, oh, look, I'll do a bit of this and I'll do a bit of that. Oh, that looks interesting on TV or whatever. So, or I'll bake or something. So I do write. I don't write every day. Generally weekends, I keep them free. Except at the moment, so right now I'm editing the book for next year, for 2022. So that's book 6. So I'm working every day on that one because I'm so involved in the story. I'm so into the story. I'm washing my hair thinking about what Lucas is going to say, and I'm eating my lunch thinking about what Lucas should have said. And Lucas is the protagonist. Not my imaginary friend. So right now I'm just in that phase where it's all consuming, and that's fine. And then I'll back off again and not work. Well, work every day, but keep weekends free again. So that's me. Yeah.
When you finish that skeleton draft, do you find that from that stage to the final iteration of the novel, do you end up cutting words or gaining words?
No, I add. I think I'm too lazy to overwrite and then cut. So I'm quite sparse in the skeleton draft. There's lots of dialogue, not a lot of emotion, not a lot of description. I've been known to just write, and Josh arrives at the cabin, brackets, describe cabin, because I don't want to go and Google what a cabin looks like. I want to keep getting the bare bones out of the story. So it's very light on all of those. And then I think the worst pass, and I did it a little bit differently for the one I'm working on now, I would write a skeleton of a chapter and then go over it again. So do that first pass immediately. And that actually helped quite a bit, because generally it's the first pass after the skeleton draft that is just the worst, because it's just, I'm reading it thinking, this is just awful. And it is, because it's meant to be. It's not even a first draft. But I found doing that, just going over it just the once, has really helped and has cut down the editing time. So I'll probably do that again. You plot as well, though, don't you? I know
I do. And yeah, and I have to write every day. For me, it's like, writing every day is like going to the gym, or what I imagine going to the gym would be like for people who exercise. Like if I don't write on a daily basis, I feel flabby, and the words feel flabby. I don't feel like, I don't know. I mean, it's been so long since I've taken a significant break of time between days of writing, but I feel like if I did, it loses something. I'm not that kind of person. I have friends who are wonderful writers who only write on contract. A lot of them write nonfiction, but it's not a daily thing for them. And for me, I feel like it really has to be.
And when you say that you write every day, but can it just be, half an hour, 15 minutes, or does it have to be 2, 3, however many hours?
It's usually a very set time period for me. Okay. I'm very organized and detail driven. So for me, if something disrupts my daily schedule, I get very antsy. And I have a kid, so he constantly disrupts my daily schedule, but that's fine. I feel like, for me, I the time I have to write is set aside for everything else. And without and having a kid and having that other stuff, because I also work full time, and there's a lot of good TV shows I want to watch. So I really need it. Really forces me to fit it in there. Mm-hmm. What I find I can't do, maybe I could, I just don't want to, is write in little nooks and crannies of the day.
Yeah, I'm not good at that either. 15
Right?
minutes here, 20 minutes there. No, I can't. I need to. I can't do that. I don't think my brain works that way.
It's like
But
diving in a pool, you know? Go
yeah,
ahead.
sometimes though, I think that can be detrimental because if I don't suddenly have a block of 2 hours, I'll think, oh well, it's too late now. I won't bother. Well, no, you should do it anyway. Because sometimes all it takes is half an hour and you've got something that's really worth keeping. So, but I'm like you, yeah, I do like routine, and I do like it to be. But with three, so I see your one kid and I raise you three teens. It can, and they're all at home right now, so it can. Although most of the time they don't want anything to do with me, so it's pretty quiet in the house. So that's what you got to look forward to.
So one of my favorite writers, Ann Tyler, this just reminded me of something she once said, where she talked about, she writes every day, and she found that for her, the days that she really doesn't want to write, that she's sick or something like that, although she's probably never had the kind of malady I have right now, but just whenever she's really, just doesn't feel it. Thank you. She finds that she forces herself to write, and that's often when her best stuff comes out. Does that happen with you as well, or?
Yeah, it has done. Where I just thought, oh, I don't want to. I'm not motivated. But I think now, 6 books in, I know what I can trust myself. I know what works, and I know for sure that if I don't get my bum in the seat, whether I feel like it or not, I'm not going to get closer to finishing the book. So sometimes it's just a case of suck it up, get your bum in the seat, get your fingers on the keyboard, and get on with it. And that does work. And sometimes, yeah, I mean, you sometimes you're just not feeling the story, or I'm in the weeds in the editing. But I'm not going to get out of them if I don't open my Word document. So that's really, I give myself a kick up the backside and I get on with it. And sometimes I'll go and put the telly on.
And for our American viewers, bum is a British colloquialism that refers to usually a homeless vagrant that you kill and then put in a chair and sit on as kind of a rest for your bottom.
Your bum, your backside, your tushy.
Yeah,
your
exactly.
hiney, I think you call it, don't you?
So we talked a little bit about, the kind of ominous overhanging of, the pandemic and everything else. And one thing I wanted to ask you about was, a lot of people are here from First Chapter Fund.
I see that. That's amazing.
Which is awesome. And including Hank Philippi Ryan, who you co-hosted with.
Yes.
And that was a pandemic era initiative, right? Or did it start before that?
It's so First Chapter Fun, every Tuesday and Thursday, my fellow author in fictional crime, Hank Philippi Ryan, and I read the first chapter of other authors' books. Tuesday, Thursday, 12:30 p.m. on Facebook and Instagram at First Chapter Fun. You can't miss it, dead easy. And it started off, I was in a group chat on Messenger, I think, with a number of authors who had books coming out last spring. So it was around middle of March-ish, and things were getting shut down here. We were looking at Europe thinking, oh my gosh, everything that's there and is going on there is going to be over here in a couple of weeks. We're getting shut down. What are we going to do? Books coming out, how do we promote them? And I said, half jokingly, well, why don't I read the first chapter of your books on Facebook or Instagram or something? Thinking honestly, truly, I thought maybe half a dozen people would say, yeah, sure, sign me up, and everyone else would run away thinking, no, you're not reading my book. What do you think you're doing? Go away. But there was all of a sudden this massive amount of interest, and I contacted a few authors and said, I'm setting this up. Do you think you'd be interested? And then I had more and more and more, and then people asking. And I think within 2 days, I had 40 people lined up. And in the end, it was 53 every day. So I said, I'll read every day in a row, no problem. I mean, you know what it's like to do your hair and makeup every day, right, Ed? I mean, it's a total pain in the bum.
Yeah, this doesn't just happen.
seriously, I mean, it takes work, obviously. So I didn't really think that through while everyone else was slobbing out in their PJs and their hair in scrunchies, as you do. I was doing hair and makeup every day. Well, I mean, you know, making myself look reasonable, I guess. So anyway, within about a week, I think, Hank left a comment on one of the reads, and I contacted Hank. We'd met very briefly at BoucherCon, not last year, the year before, 2019. There's a picture of us somewhere floating around, a group of us, and Hank and I standing together. I've never actually seen it, so if anyone has it, I'd love to see a copy, but there is one floating around. And she said, I love first chapter fun, and I offered to read from her book, The Murder List. And then she said, so what are you doing with this afterwards? You've got this scheduled, the reading scheduled into May. And I said, well, I'm going to have to stop. I can't read every day because my publishers expect me to, you know, write stuff. And it does take a lot of time because there's a lot of prep beforehand and then afterwards with uploading videos and graphics and all that fun stuff. And I said, I don't think I'm going to be able to continue. And she said, but you have to, because people are really enjoying it, and it's really cool, and it's bringing people together. And what if you had a co-host? So we started making these secret squirrel plans. And so after as of May the 12th, we joined up, and now we read twice a week, and we have reading scheduled into September and beyond. Would you believe?
You guys do such a fantastic job. I mean, you guys were kind enough to read from They're Gone, and you did videos to promote it. You had all these graphics. It was amazing. I was blown away. I did not expect that. I expected, you know, the sort of half-assed effort I would have done for someone else, but that was just so awesome. I kept emailing, like, you know, friends and my agent, and like, can you believe they put this together and this together? And yeah, that was I terrific.
Take no credit. So what we have a system now. We have a in Google Docs, we have the master list, the spreadsheet with everyone who's on it, on all the reads coming up. And Hank does the videos, so she does these 1 minute teaser videos and she puts them together, and I swear twice a week I'm blown away with what she does. They are just amazing. They're funny, and there's music to them, and they're just brilliant. We also ask authors to send us, if they have time, the fun 5 facts, where they're saying, hi, I'm Ed Aymar, and this is my book, and 5 fun facts, and we post those. And we ask the authors to send us a short fun fact about themselves and about their book, and we put up a graphic about the books and a graphic about the authors, so that people get to know the authors a little bit. And then the great thing as well is when we read, when technology works, Instagram today just was not playing ball. It just wouldn't. It just, sometimes it's a total pain. But we have the author watching as well and answering comments directly. Or answering questions and comments. So it's really fun. It really, first chapter fun, obviously it is. Honestly, it's just my little bubble of escape twice a week for half an hour, where it's just talk about books and we're reading and it's funny and we see people, and it's almost like a family in a way, you know, because you often have the same people and new people are coming and joining all the time. And people say hello to each other, and it's just really nice. So maybe one day we'll be able to do something in person. That would be really fun.
Yeah, would this have happened, do you think, to the same success without the pandemic and everybody being forced online? I mean, I actually feel like it might. So. Really?
I mean, maybe, quite probably. But if all of my events hadn't been cancelled, I might not have thought of it. You know, I might not have had the idea of, so how can I help promote other authors, because we're all at home, we don't have events, because that really was the kicker. It was seeing all of my library events and all of my in-person events and my launch and all that being canned, and thinking, well, I've got a book coming out. What can I do? And also, I found the writing community was very, very surprising for me. I worked in IT recruitment before, which was very competitive, very cutthroat. And it's not the way the writing community is. It's extremely supportive, readers, authors alike. Just the whole competition thing just seems to fall away because we all love books. And if someone reads yours, doesn't mean they won't read mine, doesn't mean they won't read Hank's or whomever's. So that was such a surprise. And I'd had so much help in terms of blurbs and introductions and whatnot from other authors, that I wanted to do something to help other authors. And now that I am more established, being able to read for upcoming authors, for debut authors as well, and introducing them to a new readership is just, it's you know, it's just a nice thing to be able to pay forward.
So I run DC, as they mentioned in the intro, I run DC's Virtual Noir at the Bar.
Yeah.
And we had this, I started doing the Noir at the Bar for DC in 2015, which is a group of 8 to 10 crime fiction writers meet at a bar. Readers come and you take turns on the stage reading a short story or an excerpt of a novel. And it's nice because most readings, in-person readings, tend to be fairly staid and conservative. Yeah. And this is a little different. The alcohol helps. It's all the alcohol. But the stories are also, people usually, you're reading for a bar, and once you do a few of these, you see a few of them, you realize that the stories need to be a little, kind of like good noir, a little funny and give you that sort of, did I just hear that kind of sense. But once the pandemic hit, I always say we, and by that I just mean me. I guess I'm just lonely, so I create people. My team and I met and we decided we should move this online. Yeah. And we did it after Alex Segura did one in New York for He Runs in New York Noir at the Bar series. And it was, it was in April, I think, and it was so warm and so well attended. There were maybe 300 to 500 people at his event, which for a reading is, right? I mean, just bizarre.
That's crazy.
And everybody needed to be there. We all, there was a chat, running alongside the event, and everybody was talking and saying, "Oh, so good to see you." I haven't.
Yes.
I mean, I've said it before, but I think about that time in March and April when we were all scared and all compassionate, sort of as like 9/12, the day after 9/11, when people were just, unified and scared and loving. It's rare that it happens, but it did briefly. And that, so I launched my series, and we did 14 last year, and we have a jazz singer who performs a couple of songs during it, and a mixologist makes a custom cocktail based off one of the books. And it's still, kind of like First Chapter Fun, has garnered a nice enthusiastic following of a couple of hundred people at every event.
The great thing about, and I hope that whenever that is, that we get back to normal. Hank and I are planning on continuing First Chapter Fun, regardless of the pandemic. The pandemic can eat my shorts. We're still going to have First Chapter Fun. But I really hope that these online events continue because geography, geography is one thing, but also what I heard when I did a couple of library events, I did a couple of talks about writing dialogue and things like that. Some people joined and they said, "We're so glad that you flipped these online because I am disabled and I can't come, even though it's in my town, I cannot come to the library. But with this, I don't have to even be on camera. I'm muted. Nobody knows who I am or what state I'm in or whatever, but I can just join." And I think that's really important too. So I really, really hope the online, it'll be a hybrid, there'll be online and in-person events, because in-person events are wonderful. They truly are. They're lovely. But I do like the online ones too.
I hope that the conferences, the big crime fiction conferences, Thriller Fest and BoucherCon and Malice Domestic and Left Coast Crime, all have a online component. Because it's expensive, and if you have, BoucherCon, for its own timetable has had to a couple of, once it was over Halloween, once it was over the first week of school, and it's just impossible to make those. If you could, I mean, you want to be there in person. There's something you gain from that you'll never get. But for writers who can't afford it or who can't make it for whatever reason, paying a little less for an online participation would be wonderful.
Absolutely, I agree. Yes, if there's some way to have both. I mean, BoucherCon, I know that Thrillerfest is online this year. BoucherCon, the jury's still out, I think. I won't be able to go to BoucherCon this year. New Orleans in end of August. Just our eldest is going to go to university. It's just before the timing, it just doesn't work. Plus hurricanes and humidity, come on. Not sure that'll be great for me.
You don't want your hair to get too curly?
Oh no. I mean,
Same.
Yeah.
It's a constant fear. I don't have wash and wear hair, unfortunately. Is that the term?
I thought they were shirts.
I don't know. I don't know anything about hair or shirts. In fact, I have this. I'm wearing this one, and it's like a V-neck, so I keep having to pull it back because I'm afraid my cleavage is going to pop out. So I'm trying to be very, very classy for the folks at Belmont. So there are, I know that we're coming up to 7:40, so there were a couple of questions we should probably get to. The first, I'll go through them, but the first I remember was asking each of us to list 5 facts about ourselves. You first, because I don't have 5 facts.
5 facts. Okay, I speak 4 languages, 3.5. English, French, German, and Swiss German. We'll make it 4. I don't have any pets because I'm allergic to most of them. My hair is naturally curly, and I used to straighten it and I gave up. My favorite food is probably bread and cheese because I'm Swiss. And I make a really, really good tiramisu. There you go.
All right.
5 things. That's off the top of my head like that. Goodness me.
Yeah, okay, let me see. I was once bit by a monkey at the Rock of Gibraltar, and I was wearing a coat and it bit me. I'm fine. The monkey's fine. I don't know. The monkey's probably dead by now. So I won that one. Number 2, I have a football injury. This finger is permanently bent. I can't straighten it.
That's weird.
Yeah. It's football injury sounds pretty good. It was actually co-ed flag football, but still, I was grabbing a flag and the flag was pulled and then it yanked my finger. So my finger was bent, but the tendon slipped off. So they had to go in and do surgery. So the doctor said, you can either never straighten your fist or you'll never be able to curl it or curl your finger. So what do you want? And I was like, well, I gotta keep the boys. That's how I make my money. No. And then the fact though about that is, to my wife's great annoyance, I call this the Panamanian tickler. That was inappropriate.
Funny though.
But I said my goal tonight was to get you to blush once. 3 would be, I think pets. You mentioned pets. We have a dog, bird, turtle, and a fish.
You mean a zoo?
Yeah, kind of. We used to have a rabbit as well, but the rabbit passed away. She was 13. They live a long time. All of our pets live a distressingly long time. We take really good care of them. So I guess that's good. For my favorite TV show of all time is still Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And which is fine. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I haven't seen it for a while, so it probably doesn't hold up, but I'm going to go with that. And my high school sport was wrestling.
Oh, wrestling, really?
Yeah. Which is why I'm like the stocky 5'9" that I'm going to be. Like I peaked growth, and the weird diet of losing like 10 pounds in a night really does a number on your growth process.
So how long did you wrestle for? Did you get wrestling?
5 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
you wear
5
that skimpy suit?
I wore the yeah.
Did
the
you
singlet
really? Is there photographic evidence?
with tights. There's not. I've destroyed all that.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
It's not a good look. It's not. It's like, Speedos at the beach for middle-aged men. It's not what anybody wants to see. All right, but that's fine. So another question. Oh, what TV shows are we enjoying right now?
What TV shows? I watched The Undoing with Hugh Grant, which I really
was that
liked.
good? You did like it?
Yeah,
I
it
heard
was.
mixed things.
Yeah, Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was. Well, I watched it very quickly, so yes. I'm hoping. I don't know when the next season of Billions is coming back, but I really, really like Billions. I love that show. I think it's really, really good. Very clever writing in there. What else? We don't have Netflix, so the only people in the world. And we've been watching Truth Be Told, based on Kathleen Barber, yeah, which is just amazing. I love that. We haven't been able to get back to it because I've been too busy editing this book, but I really, really enjoy that. So there's a few. How about you? What have you been?
During 2020, right in the pandemic, we just watched sitcoms. That's all we were into. So we were watching, but we saw really good ones. We went through Fleabag.
Oh, yes.
Loved it. I was astonished at how good it was. Another one was Catastrophe, which was terrific. It's a UK show with American comedian actor. Which is good. Another great British one that we saw was Lovesick, which is a man who
watched it, yeah.
A man finds out he has chlamydia and has to tell all of his exes.
Fun.
And then from there, it really develops into this really strange romantic comedy, but it's just brilliant. And we saw Episodes, which was it was a show on Showtime starring Matt LeBlanc from Friends, playing himself post Friends, trying to find work in his life in Hollywood based off.
Yes.
It's fantastic. It's based off the theme, the concept is two celebrated British producers are courted to come to Hollywood and make a show in the States, and they're all excited about it, and they find out that Matt LeBlanc is cast for it, and they couldn't be more disappointed. So it is and he's in on all the jokes. It's really self-effacing and fun.
That's been out for a while. Is that
it ended? It was like 2011 to 2018.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We had two other questions, and I guess I think we're coming up to. Yeah, we probably are. But when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? What books did you love?
I read a lot of. Well, when I was a kid, under 10. I read a lot of Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and whatnot. He was kind of my go-to. And when I was really tiny, it was the Mr. Men series, Roger Hargreaves. So that's a long time ago. And my kids have them now, even though they're old, but they still have them. But anyway, and then I read a lot of thrillers in my teens. I was very much into, any thrillers really, so no surprise that I write them. But I had no intention of becoming an author. All I wanted to do, this was in the 80s, big hair and big shoulder pads. I wanted to be a businesswoman. I wanted to own a company. That was my ambition, which I did fulfill in the end. But I had no intention of ever. I thought maybe one day, eventually, perhaps I might write a book, but then career and kids and career, and it wasn't until we came to Canada that I actually started writing. So I'm late to the game. And you?
I read, it's funny. I don't know if anybody's heard of these books, and it really bothers me because I loved them and I read them obsessively as a kid. But I read these books by a guy named Willard Price about two young naturalists, and they just had adventure in the title. And they would go around the world and collect animals for their dad, who had been injured and couldn't do it. So they were like Amazon adventure, Brazilian adventure, and African adventure, underwater adventure. And I mean, I think I looked at one, I found one at my folks' place, and I was like, oh, wow, this is unreadable at this point. But it was, as a kid, I was just so enamored with them. And nobody's ever heard of them, but I have the whole set. So I'm keeping them for my kid when he gets to that age. And then, when I got older, like you, I read a lot of thrillers. I read the first author that I really read a lot of books by was David Morrell, who wrote famously Rambo, and then wrote The Brotherhood of the Stone and some others, and many others. And I really, my dad and I read his books, and I really liked his writing. And the funny thing is, I met him, and I said, "Oh, when I was a kid, I read your books," and he looked really crestfallen because I think I just made him feel so old. I felt really bad about it, but it was very cool to meet him, and he's super nice.
So funny.
But I didn't want to be a writer until maybe right after college. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And then
you wanted to be a baby seal?
No, a Navy SEAL. A Navy SEAL, not a baby seal.
A Navy SEAL. Look at that.
How did I get a baby seal? How is that going to happen? I mean, I had dreams. I was excited about it, but then my dad, who was in the military, was like, "Well, you have to kill people as a SEAL. That's one of the things they do." Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, I don't want to kill anyone. I just thought you shot guns and did stuff that wasn't gonna really hit anyone."
Yes.
That was like a stormtrooper, but that ended up not panning out for a number of reasons. So yeah, and then I got a job. I had a real life, office job when I graduated college, and I thought, this is fine. I like it, but I need to write too. I need that in my life.
So that drive was always there.
Yeah, I didn't really recognize it, early. I mean, I always read, and I guess, I had the experiences a lot of writers have, where you have teachers who encourage you and people who, you write a couple of standout pieces or something for a class or what have you. But I never really took it seriously as a vocation until college. Really, I had professors who were really inspiring, and I read inspiring writers. So
I think it's the kind of job that you don't really start off saying, well, some people do, I'm sure. I don't want to knock that fact, but I'm sure a lot of authors do something else while they're establishing their career as an author, because it's not something that you can just, okay, I'm going to write now, and then you write a book and then off you go. You're set on that path for however many years. It's something that you're continually building, really. So yeah. I mean, you don't. I mean, you can take courses, obviously, and I did, but it's not like, oh, I'm going to be an accountant. Yes, I'm going to be a novelist. It's not. I don't know. There's just some kind of a disconnect there.
Yeah.
In an odd way. Seems like almost a bit of a dreamer's career. If your parents sit you down and say, "So, what do you want to be when you grow up, Ed?" And you say, "Oh, I'm going to write books," and they'll say potentially, "Well, do something else until that pans out." That kind of conversation.
Yeah, it's not bad advice.
Yeah.
So we have to close, but I wanted to ask what you're reading now and what you're enjoying and what you're working on.
So I am reading, I'm just going to start today, What's Done in Darkness by Laura McHugh, which I'm really looking forward to. That one is coming out August, I believe. So I have an early copy. So that's one. And then I have Bath House by PJ Vernon, which I'm really excited about as well. Both of those, I was trying to decide which one I was going to read first, and then I decided I would read them in order of receipt. So I got Laura's first, and I love her books. I've read all of hers. The Weight of Blood, I think, is one of my favorite books. It's so well written, so beautifully written. It's a thriller, but it's so atmospheric. It's wonderful. So that's what I'm reading, and I'm working on. So my fifth one, You Will Remember Me, publishes in May. Another twisty thriller, psychological suspense, and I'm now working on book 6. As yet untitled, because I can never come up with a good title that sticks. So I'm just going to give up and call it book 6, and that will pub in probably spring 2022.
Well, it's funny you mention The Weight of Blood because I just reread it. I had years ago, I picked it up and I read it, and then it was my wife, who reads a lot of the books that I read right afterwards, was like, what's that book on your nightstand? I was like, oh, The Weight of Blood. And I started reading it again, and then I just ran right through it again. And I was like, and I don't often, I just love, I love that book. And Laura's such a good, gifted writer. So I was, so I just ran right through that one again. And I'm really excited for her new one. My next book on my list, I really want to read Bathhouse. Everyone's talking about it, but I'm probably going to end up reading it on publication day. And then the next one after that is You Will Remember Me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, I have that sitting in my Kindle. So I'm very excited about this up and coming Hannah Mary McKinnon author that I've heard so much about. So
I hear she's really nice. I hear she's so lovely.
I have not heard that.
Really nice.
Yeah, nah, I've never. doesn't ring a bell. And then I'm working on my next book, which will, I'm sure I will. And my next book, which will ideally be done in, I don't know, mid-year. We'll see. We'll see. That's the goal.
Yeah. Am I going to get an early view of that one? Am I going to get
absolutely
to blurb it and read it? Yay! Excellent.
Yes.
So I just wanted to mention there was an earlier question for you, Hannah, from Anissa, saying, since you're a serious plotter, have any of your books changed a lot as you started to write the book?
Yes and no. So Sister Dear was interesting because the plot and the concept was so strong, and I had the beginning and I had the end, and everything else was vague at this point, but I knew what the beginning and end were going to be. But even before I started plotting, I just knew those two anchors, what they were going to be. And stuff did shift a little, but the ending is still the same. And I wrote that one quite quickly. Didn't take me very long, and I thought, yes, 4th book, I've cracked it. I know what I'm doing, hurrah. And then You Will Remember Me, my one that's coming out, my 5th one, walked up and slapped me around the face because I felt that I had no idea what I was doing. It was a gong show. It wasn't working. It was awful. Although the beginning and the end didn't change, but a lot of stuff in the middle did. Because sometimes, even though I plot heavily, and Ed, I don't know if you feel the same thing, you think you've got the plot all sorted out, and then you start writing it and you realize, no, these things aren't working, or you pivot a tiny bit and that changes other things. So it depends on the book.
Great. Do either of you have any final words before we sign off?
I do. Thank you so much for having us. And I say this whenever I love working with independent bookstores. And I always give this plea to everybody who's watching now, please, please, please visit Belmont Books online. And after this event, buy a book. They don't know, booksellers have been wonderful enough to extend their hours and do these events, and it's not free and it's not necessarily easy. So it'd be wonderful if you could go. Ideally, you should buy our books, me and Hannah, but if not, just buy any book from them. If everybody here bought one book tonight, that would be astonishing, and it'd be so great. So thank you again for having us, and this was lovely. I loved having a chance to talk to you, Hannah.
It was really fun. Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Stacey, for coordinating and having us. This was great. And thank you, everyone, for
Well,
watching.
thank you both so
Yeah,
much for
absolutely.
joining us, and what a fun conversation, as I could tell it would be from when I met you both in the beginning. Ed, I hope you feel better, and let us know if you get worse. And
Thank you.
to everybody who came tonight, we really appreciate your coming. We appreciate your support of our store, and we hope to see you at the next event. Have a great night. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you.